Hey there, shooter. On today's episode of Shooting Science, we are going to be comparing 3 different Glock triggers at 3 different price points. And after we do our measuring, we will then test them at the range and compare our targets between 2 different shooters. Let's get into it. All right, so here we have 3 different triggers. We have the Triggershark Gen 5 9mm trigger. We've got the Apex trigger, and we've got the Superior trigger. This full drop-in system from Triggershark is about $72 after the Shooting Science discount. This is $135, and this is about $235. So these are all Gen 5s, and we're going to show the difference of the trigger pull on all 3. So the first one is the Triggershark. The take-up is very short. And there's the wall. And then there's the break. Look at the reset. Like that. Whole thing again. There you go. Next is the Apex trigger. There's the take-up. Break, and reset. Kind of has a longer reset looking. Let's try that. Let's look at this one again. Yeah, Apex looks a little bit like, has a little bit longer of a reset than the Triggershark. All right, let's look at the Superior trigger. There's the take-up, very smooth. And the break. Oh, it's like a little mouse click. It's like a little mouse button. And there's the reset. Again, there's the take-up. Break. Reset. All right, now let's measure all of them. All right, first we're going to measure the Triggershark trigger. Now, one thing I want to say too is that these two, the Apex and the Superior, are more competition triggers. They're designed to shoot fast and light, and you're going to use these for your local competition or whatever competitions you're in, right? Let me show you the Triggershark trigger first, because this is more of a carry trigger. So Triggershark makes these triggers using only OEM Glock parts for maximum reliability, and since the pull weight is tuned for everyday carry, they're going to be a little heavier to pull than a competition trigger. But as you saw earlier, they're still crisp and have very short take-ups and resets. And we're going to find out at the end of the video how they compare when shooting against the other triggers. Right at 4 pounds. I'm going to do 3 on all of them. £4.5 pounds. And 4 pounds. So between 4.5 and 4 pounds for that Triggershark. Next, we're going to do the Apex trigger. £4.5 pounds as well. Do 2 more. $4.5 again. $4.5 again. 4.5 exactly on all 3. That's nice and consistent. Let's look at the Superior trigger. £2.5 pounds. That one's 3 pounds. $2.5. I think that 3 was a miss. Yeah, let me try that. Let me try that again. I think this is a consistent 2.5 pound trigger. Yeah, 2.5 pounds exactly again. Okay, now that we've got all the measuring done, wanted to show you guys real quick what we've got going on in these frames of all three of these Glocks. They all have C&H Precision Brass Speed Feed Pros installed. So when we go shoot these, they're going to be as comparable as they can be since they all have the same modifications there. If you're not familiar with these, the brass adds weight to the heel of the weapon, making it far more balanced and easier to shoot, and they do shoot flatter as a result. Okay, now let's teleport over to the range. And here we are. So I've got all three Glocks laid out right here. And for the ammunition on this little experiment, we are going to be using Patriot Sports 124 grain. And from right to left on the table, we've got the G34, G47, and G45. I also want to mention that I have not shot any of these guns prior to this test. This will be my first time shooting the G45, the G47, and the G34. I'm going to start now with the G45, sporting the Triggershark trigger. Okay, here's my 17-round group with the G45 and the Triggershark trigger. I was aiming at the top left corner of that bottom left target there. Also, I forgot to mention that target down there that we are shooting at today does not move forwards or backwards, and we have been told that it is approximately 7 yards out. And now it's time for me to try the G47 with the Apex Tactical trigger. Okay, so here's the G45 group and the G47 group. So like I mentioned earlier, this is my first time shooting the G45, the G47, and the G34. Let me tell you, I loved this G47. It had a sandpaper Talon grip on it, as well as an occluded red dot. It was a Triggercon red dot. The recoil impulse on it was really nice, and the trigger felt great too. The combination of all these parts together just made for a really sweet shooting gun, and I was able to put down a really tight group, even though it was the first time I'd ever shot it. All right, it's G34 time. All right, I'm already having some issues here with the trigger. It's not shooting when I pull the trigger. I'm gonna go ahead and reset the gun and see if I can try again. There we go. Not sure what happened there. And there's another failure to fire. I don't know if it's the ammo or if I'm getting light strikes with this trigger. I'm not sure. But we are using the same box of ammo for all three of these guns. I don't know if I'm pulling on this trigger crooked or what, but the first two triggers, the Triggershark and the Apex Tactical, perform flawlessly with no issues. Okay, so now we've got my G45, my G47, and my G34 groups up here. So before we can see what our guest shooter can do with these three triggers and these three Glocks, I'd like to point out that the G47 and the Apex trigger yielded the most solid grouping for me, while the G34, which is the competition gun here of the three, with its $235 competition trigger, did give me some issues. It was a nice trigger to pull, but it gave me some issues, and if you look at the grouping there, it's really not that much better of a grouping than with my G45 with just a Triggershark everyday duty carry trigger in it. And on top of that, my G45 did not have a nice Talon grip, and it didn't have a red dot on it at all. We were just using iron sights. So make of that what you will. All right, that's enough of my shooting. Now let's see what our guest shooter can do with the same three guns and the same ammo. I'm gonna go a little faster here and just label the screen for you as he shoots with each gun that he's shooting, and then I'll pan over to the target so you can see what his groupings look like. First, he's going to shoot that G45 with the Triggershark carry trigger. All right, those were some pretty nice groupings with that G45 and that Triggershark carry trigger. Now let's see the G47. As expected, that group was a little tighter than with the G45. Very nice work. Okay, and now for our guest shooter's favorite, the G34. Very nice, very nice. That grouping was, I would say, slightly tighter than the G47 group as well, but all three groups were pretty close in size and shape for our guest shooter here. Okay, so that about wraps it up, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I know I was surprised by how some of the triggers felt and performed against the others. The superior trigger, while it felt like a mouse click button and was fabulous to handle, it did give me some issues. Now, our guest shooter performed great with it. It is his gun, and he does practice with that all the time. So maybe I was just pulling the trigger weird, but that trigger I wasn't a super fan of. The Apex trigger, although it looks like an ugly big chunk of plastic, that would probably be the trigger that I would choose for competition after handling this G47 and shooting it and just really falling in love with this thing. I mean, this is a really, really good gun combo. Also, the sandpaper grip really helped, and the Trigicon RMR sight was awesome. And then, also, I was pleasantly surprised by how well this Triggershark duty trigger did in a competition setting. I mean, it's designed for maximum reliability. It's a little heavier. It is very crispy. It has a very short take up and very short reset, which is awesome. But this is a trigger that you would put in a carry gun and carry around every day. You wouldn't necessarily use it for competition, but look at the groups. Our guest shooter had never shot a Triggershark trigger before, and he shot it against the other two guns that he owned, and the groups looked pretty close, almost identical. And that is something to really look at, because you can get a do-it-all trigger essentially with the Triggershark and do really well with it. So whether you're carrying it, whether you're competing with it, even though it wasn't really designed for that, it just works, and it works really well. Remember, you can get 15% off one of those. It doesn't matter what kind of Glock you have. You can use my code SCIENCE15 at checkout at triggershark.com/store. I'll put the website right here on the screen so you can see it. Go there, pick out whichever trigger matches with your gun, with your Glock, and use that code in the checkout for 15% off. It's as easy as that. All right, guys. Well, that's all we had for this one. So we'll see you on the next one.